On May 5, 1945, in a small Austrian castle in the Tyrolean Alps, something happened that has no other example in the history of the Second World War. American soldiers, German Wehrmacht troops, and a handful of French political prisoners, including 2 former prime ministers, picked up rifles and fought side by side. This is the strangest battle of World War II, and almost no one talked. To understand how 13 Americans, 10 Wehrmacht soldiers, and a group of former French premiers ended up on the same side, we have to go back, way back. Castle Itter sits on a steep hill above the village of Itter in Austria's northern Tyrol, a 13th century fortress rebuilt many times over the centuries. By February 1943, it had a new purpose. The SS had taken it over. They turned it into a high-security prison annex of the Dachau concentration camp. But unlike Dachau, the people locked inside Itter were not ordinary prisoners. They were what the Reich called Prominenten, VIP prisoners, hostages, kept alive for political leverage. The list reads like a who's who of pre-war France. Édouard Daladier, the prime minister who had signed the Munich Agreement with Hitler in 1938. Paul Reynaud, the prime minister who had succeeded him and led France into war. Maxime Weygand, the supreme commander of the French army during the disaster of 1940. Maurice Gamelin, his predecessor. Léon Jouhaux, the trade union leader and future Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Michel Clemenceau, son of the legendary Tiger of France, Jean Borotra. The world tennis champion known as the Bounding Basque. Marie-Agnès Caillot, the elder sister of Charles de Gaulle, and several more. These were people Hitler had wanted alive, bargaining chips. But by May 1945, the bargaining was over. The Reich was collapsing, and the men still holding Itter were not regular soldiers. They were Waffen-SS. On May 4th, the situation at Itter became critical. The SS commandant of the castle had already fled, taking some of the guards with him. The remaining SS troops were nervous, unpredictable, and heavily armed. The prisoners armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find inside the castle. They knew that if the SS decided to execute them before American troops arrived, no one would stop it. 2 men changed that. The first was Major Josef Gangl, a career artillery officer in the Wehrmacht. Gangl had spent the last months of the war doing something extremely dangerous. He had been secretly cooperating with the Austrian resistance. By May 4th, with Germany days from surrender, Gangl had openly switched sides. He commanded a small group of Wehrmacht soldiers who had taken up arms against the SS to protect the town of Vorgl. When he learned what was happening at Itter, he knew he didn't have enough men to save the prisoners alone. So he drove a vehicle marked with a white flag into American-held territory, and he found the second man, Lieutenant John C. Jack Lee Jr., commander of a small task force from the 23rd Tank Battalion, 12th Armored Division, U.S. 21st Corps. Lee was 27 years old, blunt, energetic, the kind of officer later described as aggressive and unconventional. Gangl told him what was happening. Lee did not hesitate. What followed is something that, on paper, should not have been possible. Lee took a single Sherman tank, nicknamed Besotten Jenny, and a handful of his men. Gangl brought 10 of his Wehrmacht soldiers. They rolled toward Castle Itter together, American GIs and German troops in the same column, under the same orders, against the same enemy. When they arrived, they were joined by a third unlikely ally, an SS officer named Kurt Siegfried Schrader, who had taken up residence at the castle, befriended the prisoners, and decided he would defend them. By the morning of May 5th, the defenders of Castle Itter were 14 Americans, around 10 Wehrmacht soldiers, 1 SS officer, and a group around 4 in the morning on May 5th. The attack began. A force of 100 to 150 Waffen-SS soldiers, led by Georg Bachmann, surrounded the castle. They opened fire with small arms, machine guns, and at least 1 anti-tank gun. The Sherman tank, Besaten Jenny, took a direct hit in the engine compartment and was knocked out within the first hour. Now the defenders had only what they could carry. Inside the castle, Lee ordered the French prisoners to take cover. They refused. Renaud picked up a rifle. So did Barotra, the tennis champion. Even Weygand, in his 70s, demanded a weapon. They had spent 5 years as Hitler's hostages. They were not about to spend their last hours hiding under a table. The fighting lasted through the morning and into the afternoon. The SS pressed in from multiple sides. The defenders held. At one point, Jean Barotra, yes, the tennis player, volunteered to slip through SS lines on foot to find help. He climbed over a castle wall, ran across enemy territory, and made contact with advancing American units. He survived. He returned in an American uniform. He was 66 years old. But the most decisive moment came in the courtyard. Paul Renaud, the former Prime Minister of France, had stepped briefly into the open. An SS sniper opened fire. Major Joseph Gangl saw the shot coming. He pushed Renaud out of the way. The Mauser round hit Gangl instead. He died on the courtyard of an Austrian castle on the second-to-last day of the war in Europe, protecting a man who, 6 years earlier, had been the enemy prime minister of his country. At 1600 hours, the relief force finally arrived. American tanks from the 142nd Infantry Regiment broke through the SS lines. The siege was over. The SS attackers were captured, killed, or driven off. Every single. By the evening of May 5th, the French prisoners were on the road back to France. They reached Paris on May 10th. Jack Lee was promoted to captain and received the Distinguished Service Cross. Joseph Gangl was buried in Wurgl. Today, a street in that town bears his name. He is remembered in Austria as a national hero, a German officer who chose, in the final hours of a catastrophic war, to die saving the lives of his former enemies. 2 days after the battle, on May 7th, Germany signed its unconditional surrender. The Battle of Castle Itter was, by some accounts, the last ground battle of the European theater. It was also the only one in which American and German soldiers fought, side by side, against a common enemy. So why has almost no one heard of it? Maybe because it doesn't fit the clean narrative we tell ourselves about that war. The good guys and the bad guys, in clear uniforms, on clear sides. The Battle of Castle Itter says something more complicated. It says that, even in the deepest darkness, some men on every side chose honor over flag. And for one strange afternoon in the Austrian Alps, that was enough. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Every week, The Forgotten Front brings you the battles that history left behind. Next time, a story you won't believe is true